The bomber parked his car right outside a holy place, a mosque.
Heavy lifting equipment is being used here now at the mosque, and local people are trying to help the emergency services. They say the mosque took the full force of the blast. It was brought to the ground, and it was full at the time because prayers were taking place. Locals believe there are still dead bodies trapped underneath the rubble.
Pakistan's government says it will keep fighting the militants, whatever the cost. In Islamabad, 2 hours drive away, a visiting ally lent her support.
So this is our struggle as well. And we commend the Pakistani military for their courageous fight. And we commit to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Pakistani people in your fight for peace and security.
A rickshaw brought this man to hospital. There weren't enough ambulances to carry all the wounded or enough beds to treat them. Medical staff were overwhelmed. Tonight we saw new coffins being rushed in. About 60 of the dead were women and children. And as they grieve for their lost loved ones, Pakistanis wonder when the next bomb will come. Orla Gearan, BBC News, Peshawar.
A gun battle in broad daylight in Kabul. A calculated and terrifying attack, even for a city used to Taliban tactics. Gunmen broke into a guest house used by the United Nations, killing 6 foreigners and 3 Afghans. Many others were injured.
I have a broken foot.
The building ablaze, many of the residents tried to escape, some leaping to safety. Others weren't so lucky.
The bullet hit here. I could hear a foreign woman screaming for help. She jumped, and I heard she died.
This was the worst incident for the UN here in many years. A deliberate attempt to scare foreigners away from helping the country. Further proof that security continues to get worse. Already the Taliban have claimed responsibility for this attack, saying that they are specifically trying to target people responsible for running the second round in the presidential election. This incident for now seems to be over, but in the last few seconds we've heard a series of explosions coming from elsewhere in the city. Rockets are being fired into central Kabul. There's panic and chaos at the 5-star Serena Hotel. One of the devices has landed here, another clear attempt to kill foreigners. The guests are rushed towards a safe bunker. No one's injured, but the Taliban have again delivered a clear warning.
This attack will not, I repeat, not deter the UN from continuing its work to contribute to reconstruct a war-torn country.
The Taliban warn there'll be more attacks. The real danger is that they succeed in scaring away foreign workers at a time when Afghanistan needs them the most. Ian Pannell, BBC News, Kabul.
Here, a man has appeared in court in County Durham charged with a kidnap and manslaughter of a teenage girl. The body of Ashley Hall, who was 17, was found in a field in Sedgefield on Monday night. Police say she left her home on Sunday to meet someone she knew from the internet. A gang member who was jailed for arming the killer of the schoolboy Rhys Jones in Liverpool has had his sentence increased. The Court of Appeal ruled that the 7-year term given to James Yates in January was unduly lenient, and they've raised it to 12 years. 11-year-old Rhys was shot dead in a pub car park in August 2007 as he made his way home from football training. A series of postal strikes due to start tomorrow will go ahead. Unions and the Royal Mail have been deadlocked in 3 days of talks, but in the last few minutes they've just said there's been no agreement. Let's get the very latest from our business correspondent John Moylan, who's been outside the Communication Workers Union headquarters in South London all day. What do we know, John?
Well, I think it's been a day of disappointment all around. I mean, there had been hopes that after 2.5 days of pretty solid, intensive talks that these strikes might be averted, but those hopes basically ebbed away all day, and in the last few minutes it became clear that the strikes would be on. Just a few minutes ago, the Postal Union put out a statement saying that actually they tabled the proposal earlier today to Royal Mail. They say that at this time they haven't had confirmation as to whether that proposal is acceptable, and as a result the strikes are going to go ahead. From their point of view, Royal Mail have also put out a statement saying that they're condemning the fact that the CWU are basically walking away as peace talks were making progress. They say yesterday that they were on the verge of a sensible agreement, and what of course all of this means for millions of mail users is that 3 days of strikes are set to go ahead, and we're looking at several days after that of major disruption to mail as well.
John, thanks very much for that update. John Moylan from the CWU. The time now is just after 6:15. Our top story tonight. The 14 servicemen who lost their lives in an RAF Nimrod crash. A report says their deaths were preventable. And coming up,
Liftoff of Ares 1X.
we have blast off for the first time in 30 years. A new rocket takes off from the Kennedy Space Centre.
Later on BBC London News, homes fit for heroes, the housing estate refurbished for soldiers and their families. Plus, can heavyweight hopeful David Hay be champion of the world? We hear from Lennox Lewis on the Londoners' chances. The tennis star Andre Agassi has admitted to taking illegal drugs and lying about it to the sports authorities in order to escape a ban. In his new autobiography, the 8-time Grand Slam winner says he took the recreational drug crystal meth in 1997. Ollie Foster reports.
Let's dance.
He was the superstar who loved to rebel against the tennis establishment. And as the best player in the world, the Agassi brand earned him millions.
Image is everything.
The image has changed through a brilliant career. Very few men have won all 4 Grand Slams, but now that image has been damaged by the shocking revelations in his book.
I was brutally honest about myself. I detailed my misguided rebellions, my regrettable tantrums, my frustrations and distractions and bad decisions, which in a few instances nearly ended in catastrophe.
In 1997, racked by injury and anxiety over his marriage to the actress Brooke Shields, he took crystal methamphetamine. He describes a tidal wave of euphoria that sweeps away every negative thought in my head. I've never felt such energy. Testing positive for the drug later that year, he then lied to tennis chiefs, saying he drank accidentally from one of his assistant Slim's spiked sodas, unwittingly ingesting his drugs. I asked for understanding and leniency. He received no censure at all, and in a remarkable comeback he went on to win 5 more Grand Slam titles. The International Tennis Federation say they're surprised and disappointed by Agassi's admission. The World Anti-Doping Agency would like tennis authorities to shed some light on the way they handled the case.
He wrote this letter to the ATP to basically excuse himself for failing a drugs test, and he basically says he made it up. Now, that is a very worrying situation because it begs the question, well, if Agassi did it and was then let off, how many other people have done it?
Earlier this year, the Frenchman Richard Gasquet tested positive for taking cocaine, but escaped a lengthy ban saying he was contaminated after kissing a girl. Martina Hingis retired after being banned for 2 years after testing positive for cocaine. Agassi retired 3 years ago, a hero to his adoring fans. Many will look at him in a different light today. Ollie Foster, BBC News.
The banks on your local high street could soon look very different as approval is finally given to split up Northern Rock and sell off its profitable side. Lloyds and RBS could also be forced to sell some of their branches, and companies like Tesco are thought to be interested buyers. Our chief economics correspondent Hugh Pym reports.
Since the credit crisis, the high street has been dominated by the big banks. But soon a relaunched Northern Rock will be put up for sale, and it's expected that RBS and Lloyds will have to sell branches. Newcomers like Virgin Money and Tesco are ready to step in. The result, more competition. So what's happening? Just over 2 years ago, Northern Rock customers queued to get their cash. The bank was rescued with taxpayers' money, then nationalised. Today, the European Commission has given the go-ahead for a chunk of it to be sold by the government, including the branches and most of the staff.
The attractive bits of the business will be available, and with that comes a workforce, with that comes a branch network, with that comes some brand recognition and some loyalty in certain parts of the country. All these could be attractive for some people who want to enter the market.
The less attractive bits of Northern Rock, some might say, will be left with the taxpayer. £55 billion worth of mortgages, some of that may turn into bad debt. Other banks which have been bailed out by the government, RBS for example,